Welcome to the inner space. I'm Shriram. At the inner space, we are creating a podcast and a community to help each of you reflect, contemplate, and advance in your own lives at your own pace and in your own personal space. Our hope is that everyone doesn't need a coaching session or a retreat at some far off location in order to find their own true potential and their own true nature, that this can be done in the comfort of your house, your desk, your commute, wherever. So, welcome to the inner space and thank you for trusting us with your potential. In our last episode, we explored failure, how falling can become fertile ground for humility and renewal. When we begin to move through failure with a little more ease and grace, something beautiful happens. The fear that once held us tight begins to soften, and what rises in its place is curiosity. Curiosity about what happened in that event, about what we could have done differently, what we could do differently the next time, about what life might be trying to teach us through this episode. That curiosity is the seed of learning, and learning, when embraced fully, transforms from something we do occasionally after a failure or once in a while to a way of being, a quiet, steady openness to all of life's mysteries. This episode is about moving through failure with that openness, with ease and grace. It's about what it means to live life as a student, not just collecting information and seeking value, but allowing every experience, every moment, every person, every twist and turn to shape who we are becoming as children of the universe. Today, we will explore four dimensions to this art of lifelong learning: the sacred restlessness in curiosity, the process of learning and unlearning, the mirrors we can find in others for our own evolution, and the paradox of mastery. How true wisdom brings us back to simplicity and humility. And as always, we will learn from those who've dedicated their lives to learning, from sports legends to artists to students to tech titans. We will pause along the way for a few practices, ways to remember that we are, all of us, works in progress. WIP. And that's a beautiful affirmation we're going to kick off our exploration with. I am a work in progress, and I'm enjoying the journey. So let's begin. Learning begins not in certainty, but in wonder. A restless wonder to see more clearly. True curiosity doesn't stand on what it already knows. It kneels, wide eyed, before what it doesn't know. It's humble, unassuming, and alive. It dissolves the ego's need to be right or already know, and opens us up to the field of not knowing and possibility. It's that quiet hum beneath the surface of the mind that whispers to our heart, there's something here that I don't know, something for me to understand. Psychologist William James once called curiosity the impulse toward better cognition. And Alvin Toffler wrote, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. In the world of business, one person who understood this well, Satya Nadella. When he became CEO of Microsoft in 2014, he inherited a company that was incredibly powerful globally, but also equally rigid, caught, in his words, in a know it all culture. He began transforming it, not by rewriting strategy or implementation plans, but by reshaping the mindset. He asked his leaders to replace know it all with learn it all. Meetings began to change tone, more listening and more asking questions to create space for new ideas to emerge. Nadella credits this shift to his personal journey, raising his son Zain, who had cerebral palsy, taught him empathy, patience, and the humility to learn from life rather than control it. Whereas the birth of his son prompted for him the question, what does this mean for our lives? He saw his wife instead ask the question, what does our child need to thrive? While he was absorbed in his own loss, she turned outward into empathy and action. He later said that it took him years to catch up to her, to realize that empathy is not a soft skill, but the deepest form of intelligence. Curiosity for him became a form of that intelligence, a way to understand before acting. When we stay curious, we stop guarding ourselves and start expanding our mind. We move from defense to discovery, and that changes everything in leadership, in learning, and in life. Neuroscience agrees. When we are genuinely curious, the brain's reward centers, especially the caudate nucleus and hippocampus, light up. That spark of wonder actually helps us absorb and retain information better. In other words, we are literally wired to grow through awe. So take a moment to reflect on your curiosities and where your awe and wonder was and is. Here are a few questions for you to reflect on, meditate upon, or journal. What were you most curious about as a child? What are you most curious about today? If you could devote 1 year purely for the sake of learning something, anything, what would that be? What would you choose to learn today in your life? Learning isn't about finding the right answers. It begins when we ask the right questions. This can be a scary process. Learning in its truest form rarely feels steady or comfortable. It begins in the unfamiliar, in the moments when what we knew no longer works, and we must find our balance again. That space of uncertainty, that pause before the next step, is what Pema Chodron calls groundlessness, the place where transformation begins. Psychologist David Kolb mapped this beautifully through his learning cycle, which has 4 stages to it: experience, reflection, conceptualization or insight, and experimentation. We experience something new, we reflect on it, we draw insights, and we act again. Experience, reflection, insight, experimentation. Each loop spiraling deeper than the last. Neuroscience now shows why this matters. Because the brain is plastic, it reshapes itself with experience and attention. One metaphor to visualize the brain is a forest of pathways that strengthens and grows wherever attention flows. Every act of attention is energizing a pathway in the brain, and every repetition strengthens that pathway. We are both sculptor and clay at once, reshaping our inner landscape through the choice of practice and awareness. In her decades of research, Carol Dweck, the author of the book Mindset, explored why some people thrive under challenge while others retreat. In one of her most famous and cited studies, she gave two groups comprising hundreds of school children a series of puzzles, the kind that start easy and keep growing more difficult. After each round, she praised each group differently. One group was praised for their intelligence. Children were told, "Wow, you must be really smart at this." The second group was praised for effort. They were told, "Wow, you must have worked really hard at this." A control group received neutral feedback about performance. Now came the real test. Children were offered a choice between two more puzzle sets after the first rounds. A challenging set that they were told would help them learn a lot, or an easy set that they were told would ensure continued success. The results were striking. Almost 90% of the children who were praised for effort chose the challenging set, whereas most of those who were praised for intelligence chose the easier set. And when all were later given puzzles far beyond their level, the results were even more stark. The effort group persisted longer, stayed curious, and even improved on their results, whereas the intelligence group gave up faster, doubting themselves. Dweck calls this the growth mindset, the belief that ability can expand through effort, strategy, and feedback. Where we would see mistakes as data, learning accelerates. When we see mistakes as verdicts, learning stops. When we praise effort and process over perfection and outcome, curiosity deepens. As Pema Chodron writes, real learning asks us to stay when the ground beneath us shifts, to sit in that open, uncertain space and listen. Because often what feels like confusion is simply the mind stretching to make room for a new possibility, a new truth. As someone once told me, confusion is the dawn of wisdom. Thomas Edison understood this well. After thousands of failed prototypes, he said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work." That is the posture of a learner, one who meets uncertainty and failure not with fear, but with curiosity, the excitement to keep going and to keep learning. So, if you find yourself in a season of not knowing, a season of confusion, remember this too is part of life's lessons. Groundlessness is not the absence of learning, it's the soil from which wisdom grows. The good news is that you are not the lone wolf in the fertile forests of learning. No one learns alone. Every person we meet, every conversation, and every interaction we have holds up a mirror. Sometimes that mirror reflects encouragement, and sometimes it reveals blind spots. Either way, learning through others, learning through feedback is one of the most powerful and humbling paths of growth. Psychologist Lev Vygotsky called this social learning. The idea that we develop through interaction, not isolation. One of his central concepts was called the zone of proximal development, ZPD. The gap between what a person can do alone and what they can do with guidance from a more capable other. In that zone, he said, lies the sweet spot of learning, where challenge meets support. He introduced the idea of scaffolding long before the term became common in education. A mentor, a teacher, or a peer who offers temporary structure through questions, hints, role modeling that helps the learner stretch just beyond their own current ability. In other words, we grow through interaction, imitation, and push pulls with other people. Each relationship is, in fact, a live classroom for the brain. Athletes have long understood this. The best athletes have not one coach, but a team of coaches, with each focused on a specific aspect of the game and the skills required for mastery. Champions don't just learn even from their coaches, they learn from their peers too. Take Serena Williams, for example. She surrounded herself with different coaches for different needs, one for technique, one for fitness, one for mental conditioning. After nearly every match, win or lose, she would rewatch game footage, sometimes multiple times, studying angles, footwork, and mental patterns. In the recent Wimbledon finals post match ceremony, Carlos Alcaraz said of his competitor Yannick Sinner in his winning speech, I spend more time these days with Sinner than with my own family. He's, of course, referring to the hundreds of hours they spend playing together, but also the hours he spends studying his opponent's game and processing feedback on his own game through videos, self reflection, and discussions with his team of coaches. In the world of business, Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, took this notion of feedback to another level. He built a culture of what he calls radical transparency. Meetings were recorded so anyone could watch. Decisions were openly debated, and junior employees were encouraged to challenge senior leaders, including himself. Dalio believed that pain plus reflection equals progress. Whenever something went wrong, the first question was never who messed up, but rather what can we learn from this? It was uncomfortable, yes, but it created a company, a generation of learners rather than defenders. And that's what feedback really is: friction that polishes, chiseling that reveals the sculpture within. When I quit working with McKinsey, my former employer, several years ago, a firm with a thriving culture of feedback, I set up calls and meetings with all my mentors to collect advice for my journey ahead before I left. One of them left me with a parting question as our conversation came to a close. He said, Shri Ram, now that you leave us and walk your own path, I have just one question for you. Who will you now have your most uncomfortable conversations with? That question has stayed with me as a reminder of the importance of setting up mirrors along the path in the form of people who care for our success and our well being. Indeed, that mentor ended up being the answer to his own question. A simple way to set this up in your life is to build a feedback ritual. This is called the 333 feedback ritual. Once every 3 months, ask three people you trust 3 questions. What am I doing well? What can I do more of or less of? What's one thing you see in me that I may not be seeing in myself? These three people could be friends, partners, colleagues, or family members. Choose just three whom you trust. Ask them these 3 questions and then just listen. Don't explain, defend, or justify. The more you defend and attempt to be self righteous or explain yourself, the more likely you are to shut down future feedback. Simply write down what you receive, thank them for the gift, and reflect. And finally, if you are able to, commit to one small change. Learning through others means being willing to see what we would rather not, to accept that wisdom often wears the face of another person. Every person, even and sometimes especially the difficult ones, is a mirror and a teacher, a precious jewel. Mastery is indeed a paradox. Because true mastery isn't about knowing more, it's about letting go and needing less. It's not an ascent towards righteousness or control or perfection or one upmanship. It's a return to freedom and humility. The paradox is that the deeper we go into any discipline, the more we realize how vast it truly is and how small we are within it. The great saint Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa understood this deeply. He once said, only two kinds of people can attain self knowledge: those who are not encumbered at all with learning, that is to say, whose minds are not overcrowded with thoughts borrowed from others, and those who, after studying all the scriptures and sciences, have come to realize that they know nothing. The simple and the wise meet in the same place, the quiet, joyful field of not knowing. This is a space that is often met with shaming and mockery in society. Look, there goes the person who doesn't know anything. It's okay to not know. In fact, not knowing is the field of possibility from where absolutely any creative act of consciousness can emerge. During a live jazz performance, Herbie Hancock, child prodigy and one of the most influential jazz musicians of the 20th century, once struck the wrong chord while playing with Miles Davis. The sound was completely off, but Miles Davis didn't frown. He played a few notes that turned Hancock's mistake into music. Afterwards, Herbie asked him how he did that. Miles smiled and said, "There are no wrong notes in music, only new possibilities." That moment changed him forever. He realized that mastery isn't perfection, it's playful presence, the ability to meet what arises without judgment and with openness to possibility. Author George Leonard, in his book Mastery, described this journey through what he called the 5 keys to mastery: instruction, practice, surrender, intentionality, and what he called the edge. We learn by seeking wise teachers and receiving their instruction. That's the first key. We learn by practicing long after others have stopped. We learn by surrendering with patience to the plateaus that appear to have no progress. We learn by acting with purpose. And finally, we arrive at mastery by daring to step just beyond comfort and remembering that true mastery is always on the edge between knowing and not knowing. Mastery, Leonard wrote, is not a peak we reach, but a path we come to love, a lifelong rhythm of effort, rest, and renewal. True learning isn't accumulation, it's surrender. The expert performs, but the master dissolves. Learning loops back into not knowing, and ultimately, knowledge becomes silence, a silent devotion to the infinite from which all things arise. Now, learning isn't only something that happens in the mind, it's a way of being, a muscle that we can build through simple intentional acts of noticing. So let's dive in to a few practices, a few muscles that we can build. Each of these practices is an invitation to stay in movement, to stay curious, and to stay teachable. The learning loop, a guided journaling exercise. This practice is about turning experience into insight and is adapted from David Kolb's research on the learning cycle, where he spoke about 4 stages of the learning cycle: experience, reflection, insight, and experimentation. So let's apply this to something in our life. Think of a recent moment that felt difficult. Perhaps a conversation, a message you received, a decision that was taken, or something that didn't go as planned. Now, walk through these 4 stages. You may pause after each question and journal if you wish before proceeding further. The first stage: experience. What happened? Who said what? Who did what? Simply describe the facts of what happened without judgment. Just the facts, write them down. The second stage: reflection. As you reflect on this event, what emotions or thoughts arose for you then? And what emotions or thoughts arise for you now? The third stage, insight. What is this moment teaching you about yourself, others, or life? Sit deeply with this question. Stay open to any lessons life is wanting you to learn through this experience. As my teacher Geeta would say, life is always teaching you lessons. Life keeps repeating the lesson until that lesson is learned, and once it is learned, you're ready for the next lesson. So, what's the lesson life is wanting you to learn through this difficult moment? And then the fourth stage, experimenting. What might you do differently next time? You can reflect on these at your own time, in your journal, or even as a quick silent reflection. You may feel unsure or wonder if there's anything to learn at all. That's natural. Stay with the reflection anyway. Sometimes understanding arrives only after we've actually put pen to paper and let the body express itself completely. Feedback as a mirror. This is a practice that I sometimes task my coaching clients with. To go out and proactively seek feedback from people that they trust. It is a way of seeing yourself through the eyes of others. This is called the 333 feedback ritual. Once every 3 months, reach out to 3 people that you trust and ask them 3 simple questions. What am I doing well? What could I do more or less of? And what's one thing you are seeing in me that I may not be seeing in myself? These people could be friends, colleagues, partners, or family members. Find the mix that works for you and make sure these are people that you trust. You can ask these questions directly to them or share it over a message or an email with some context on why you are seeking this feedback from them. When you receive their responses, remember to just listen and receive. No explanations, no justifications, no defenses. This is feedback that you have sought. Any form of defense or explanation may only reduce the likelihood of future feedback coming your way. Simply write down what you hear, thank them, and choose one small thing to reflect or work upon. Now, just the thought of doing this can feel very uncomfortable. If it does, awesome. That's a sign that you are on to something, because resistance is the threshold of growth. Stay open. You don't have to agree with anything here. Simply listening with humility is your task. The learning pause. This practice can help you interrupt old patterns of behavior through curiosity. The next time you feel tension in a meeting, at home, or even in traffic, take a slow breath. If you wish, count down from 10 to 1 and ask yourself, what am I learning in this moment? Maybe the learning is about patience. Maybe it's about boundaries. Maybe it's simply awareness of your own reactivity and your own patterns. Remember, true learning is not about making someone else wrong and yourself right. It's not about judging. True learning is an opening, it's a new possibility for one's own growth and evolution. In the heat of the moment, the mind may insist, there is nothing to know here. I know everything that I need to know. Pause, breathe, and stay open anyway. Because that's when the question matters most. What am I learning in this moment? The long game, a slow hobby. This is a practice to teach us the joy of the journey. It's a great one whether you're in a job that gives you constant and instant gratification or one with delayed and uncertain payoff. Outside of your daily work, choose an activity or a hobby that takes time and skill and patience to produce results. Something where there is no instant payoff. This could be gardening, it could be cooking, calligraphy, knitting, learning a musical instrument, painting, whatever it is, pick one. Commit to showing up regularly. Find a teacher if you need, and show up without judging progress. Let the process be your guide. Now, note that you may experience boredom, impatience, or a voice that says, "Oh, I'm not good at this," or "There's nothing I'm getting out of this. Why am I even doing this?" When that voice shows up, smile at it. It's the modern mind detoxing from an obsession with speed. The reward of a slow hobby is patience and presence, not perfection of outcomes. The beginner's eyes, a guided meditation. This is a practice to rediscover wonder wherever you are in life. Find a comfortable seat or lie down if you prefer. Close your eyes and take a few slow breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Let the body soften. Now, bring to mind a situation you're struggling with. Something that feels stuck or unresolved. Don't analyze it, just hold it gently in awareness. Imagine now that you are seeing this situation through beginner's eyes. You may do this, for example, by imagining you are a friend hearing this story from your best friend for the first time. Or you may imagine that you are an alien visitor, curious about human life, who has taken on your body to experience it and has just gone through this situation. Or you may imagine that you are a child, open, honest, and curious about a particular moment in your life. Now, look again at that difficult situation from this new place of innocence. Look at it with the eyes of a beginner. What new perspectives reveal themselves to you? Where might you give yourself a little more compassion? What strength or courage has been quietly present that you hadn't seen before, either in yourself or someone else? What is your intention in this situation? If the mind wanders to other thoughts, that's okay. Stay with the beginner's eyes for a little longer. The beginner's eyes remind us that every situation, no matter how familiar, still holds wonder, newness, and fresh lessons. Take a closing breath and let the question echo gently within your awareness. What might become possible if I saw this not as a problem in my life, but as a joyful lesson unfolding for me to learn? When you open your eyes, open them with a smile and notice how the body feels. Learning is simply this: the willingness to see again, to see freshly, fully, and without the armor. Today, we have explored what happens when we move through failure with ease and grace, and how it opens us into a space of continuous learning. We've looked at the sacred restlessness of curiosity, the process of learning through reflection and groundlessness, how others act as mirrors in our growth, and the paradox of mastery, that the more we know, the less we realize we can cling on to anything that we know. We've seen that learning isn't an event, it's a rhythm, a dance between effort and surrender, knowing and not knowing. When we move through failure with this rhythm, what emerges isn't certainty, it's lessons and opportunities. We stop chasing perfection and start participating in the generativeness of life. Learning becomes less about adding and more about uncovering, seeing what was always there, only now with clearer eyes. There's a quiet joy that comes when we realize that we are never going to be finished. Every season, every mistake, every conversation becomes a classroom, a chance to begin again, to learn something new. Perhaps that is what wisdom really is, not the end of confusion, but the return of wonder. Some affirmations for us to wrap with. Every experience in my life is a lesson in disguise. Every experience in my life is a lesson in disguise. I release the need to be right and choose to be curious. I release the need to be right and choose to be curious. It's okay for me to not know everything. It's okay for me to not know everything. I learn best when I am gentle with myself because wonder is my way home. I learn best when I am gentle with myself because wonder is my way home. Take a moment now to ask yourself, what have I been learning lately? Not from books or podcasts for that matter, but from life. What situation, person, or season of life is currently my teacher? And what would it look like to meet this chapter not with judgment upon others or myself, but with curiosity and wonder? Because life never asked us to be the expert. It only asks us to be students, wide eyed, willing, and awake to its wonders. Thank you for joining me at the inner space, and I'll see you here again.